Yuma, Arizona. Um, I've spent quite a bit of time down in Yuma over the years, and it's a neat area. Compared to the Sonoran Desert here, it's kind of like the face of the moon. A lot less growing, and it gets a lot hotter in the summer. And not as much wildlife and stuff out there. Like I said, it's kind of like being on the surface of the moon. Um, Back in mid 90s, I believe it was. I'm not sure quite on the date, but I'd just gotten a fish a gold bug recently. And I was looking at the Yuma area because there's a lot of rumors going around that people were finding some pretty good gold down there. And I thought I'd like to go down there and take a look around and get a shot at it. And back in those days, there wasn't anybody you could call up or go on the internet because there wasn't an internet for one thing. But you couldn't go on the internet and look up where to go out there. You just basically had to look at the books and wing it. So I loaded up the truck and the dog, his DJ, and he's pretty young at that time, and we headed to Yuma. And I guess I've met some of the most bizarre people I've ever met metal detecting in Yuma. And I'll save some of those for other stories because it's pretty wild sometimes. So we headed to Yuma, and I went the back way through Wickenburg and out that way, and on 95 headed for the Laguna Placers in Yuma. And you can look them up. They're in the book. It's called Laguna. And I picked up a guy hitchhiking close to the military base. He's a military kid. And he's going into town for whatever. He's on a Friday, so he's probably going in to have a little leave time or whatever. But it's a pretty good sized military base there. And I pick him up, and we're talking on the way into town. Good kid. And I guess I was pretty young back then, too, though. So he was a lot younger than me then. But anyway, we got to talking, and somehow, of course, we got on the subject of gold because that's what I was going to do. And after he told me about himself, he wanted to know what I was up to, so I told him. And he says, he said, we had a family member that used to mine in Yuma. I said, really? He said, yeah. He goes, I don't remember if it was my uncle or great uncle or something like that. He said, but he used to run an old dry washer and in the washes and whatnot over at Laguna and make a pretty good living out of it. And that got my attention right away. And he couldn't remember a whole lot about it. And like I said, he's pretty young, but he knows the area and he grew up there. So he told me that his grandfather always told him about the Rhyolite Hills and took him back there one time and showed him these hills that are sticking up out of the ground back in there. And they've got some really nice color into them, kind of a purplish and reddish looking hue. And it's in a little valley up in there. So anyway, he gave me directions on how to get back in there, and I went back in there. And as I was driving back in there, it got a little hairy because you get up, it's dissected pediment in there, so you got these hills with washes on either side all through there, and they made roads on top of these things. And there's a big set of power lines that I was following as my landmark or whatever. So anyway, I'm following these power lines, and the road was a power line road. Man, some spots you're getting along in there, your wheels are almost on coming off the edges on both sides. If you would have had to get out of your truck up there, you're going right down the hill. It's like 500 feet. It's not straight down, it's slope. And after going on that for, a couple miles in there, in and out of that stuff and up on those ridges and down into valleys and up, I come over the hill into a valley, and it was about the right distance, and it's where the power lines turned the whole bit. So I looked down the hill, and right away I spotted the rhyolite sticking up out of the ground there. And I said, well, we're in the right area, DJ. So down the hill we went. Right away found a really nice campsite. So we set up camp. And I had plenty of time to hunt that day. So we went up the wash, we hunted, and we hunted a few other washes. I looked for dry wash tailings piles, couldn't find any. No sign anybody had ever worked in there. And I'm getting a little confused. I'm thinking, well, followed another one of these, did I? And we had supper and went to bed. Next morning, got up, Nate, and walked over to where the rhyolite was exposed there, the dike of it, and went up over the top of that hill to the next little valley over, and started seeing a little bit of evidence that the miners had been in there poking around. And that got me interested. And then somehow, on the moonscape that I was telling you about, DJ got into one of the few cholla that were there, and he had thorns all up one side. So we went down to the edge of the wash, and I started pulling thorns out of my dog. And I got to looking around while I was pulling thorns out of my dog, and there was a bicycle tire sticking out from under a tree. Well, not tire, I'm sorry, a bicycle rim. No tire on the rim, just the rim. And it's sticking out from under a tree. So I look at this thing, and I walk over there, and I give it a tug. There's some resistance, so I give it a harder tug, and it moved a little bit. I pulled it out, and it's on a piece of wood, and the bearings had been somehow fabricated to fit through that wood, and I realized right away what I'd found. I found a homemade dry washer, as that young man had described to me, that his relative built by hand. And it was made out of, most of the parts were there, the metal parts, the wood had long rotted away. And there was a 24-inch or so front wheel off a bike, or wheel off a bike, and a little bitty wheel like off a tricycle, or maybe the front wheel was off that tricycle. And he had it set up and had been running, I don't know what he's running for a belt, maybe an inner tube, who knows. But anyway, he had a puffer style with a bellows dry washer made out of a bicycle. Ingenuity of the miner. But anyway, I got excited then. So up the wash I went hunting, after I got the rest of the thorns out of the dog. Went up the wash hunting. Right away got a great target, and I'm thinking, wow, and I dug it, and down about 6-8 inches, this was in the ground. And when I picked it up, it scared me at first. I threw it back down. And I'll show you why. Listen. Whoop. Whoop. I'll be right back. Gotta go get it. Okay, back. I'm sure you can hear that. And it vibrates as it makes that noise. So when I picked it up, I threw it down right away. I didn't know what the heck I had in my hand. If I was going to get bit or blown up or what the heck it was. Turns out I looked this thing up, and it's a Chinese medicine ball as near as I can figure. And somehow they have inside here a gizmo that makes this thing ring and vibrate with the slightest movement. Pretty cool find. Probably one of my strangest finds out in the Arizona desert. And I did get one Chinese coin out of that area too. And so they were in the area, who knows when. And anyway, I started hunting again up the sides of that wash. And right away I started finding gold nuggets. And not big ones. I think the biggest one was, I want to say 1/3 of an ounce. Nice chunky stuff. And most of the nuggets were right around, I don't know, a gram, gram and a half, 2 gram area. And a couple a little bigger than that, and a whole lot of real small ones. And I worked my way up that wash over the next day and the other half a day before we had to go back home. And I got over an ounce of gold. I can't remember exactly how much it was. We didn't keep track real well back then, and I don't know if I wish I would have or not. Like I said, I sell most of my gold still, and I'd get the gold and sell it. It was a reason I was going out there. Is I enjoy getting out in the boondocks and doing these hunts, but I also enjoy the little addition to the income there through my hobby. So anyway, I've been going back to that spot for years and years and years, and I kind of forgot about it over the years, and I sit around looking at some of my stuff, and I seen this, and I thought, well, I'll tell you folks about this because it was so funny. Like I said, it scared the crap out of me when I picked it up. It made that noise. And I thought I'd tell you the story about it. And Yuma's a really cool area, and there's a lot of gold there. And as I started hunting that area more and more, it got farther in from where I went along those power lines. Pretty near every wash has been dry washed to some extent, some more than others, and it's produced quite a bit of gold, and that was all from hearing rumors and whatnot. So back then, like I said, we couldn't go on the internet and study an area. It wasn't available. So it was libraries and they had what they called the public room up here at the Arizona Mining and Mineral Museum, which they closed for reasons of money. Can't afford to have it open anymore. One of the best mining and mineral museums I'd ever seen. But we go up in this public room and you could read letters from miners to their family, records, just obscure stuff. And found a lot of areas that way too. But the rumors, when you talk to people, don't always just throw that away as, just some guy blabbering. Some of these are true. And I'll admit a larger percentage of the stories I hear don't pan out when I go look. It doesn't mean they weren't true. It just means I didn't find what I was looking for. But a lot more don't pan out than do. But I've had some pretty wild sounding tales turn out to be true that I followed up on. And I've still got a pile of them I need to follow up on. And I'm going to share some of these with you as we move along here. So if you're liking this stuff, you might want to subscribe and ring that bell and let me know you like it or leave a comment. And I sure do enjoy reminiscing and going back. And hopefully as I tell some of these stories of my adventures, you can pick up some tips and some ideas and some of the methods that I use to locate these areas. And a lot of it's just boots on the ground. And now when I hear a story like this, I have such a huge pile of options to use to find that area, from Google Earth to those old library articles I mentioned. And with Google Earth, man, I can zoom in to an area that I'm looking at and find that rhyolite I was looking for without ever leaving my chair, and look for areas that I hear about. Google Earth is an amazing tool. If you don't have it and you're not using it, you better get to it because you're missing out. And I can take a book like this and zoom in on Google Earth with the info I find and other information. And if you've been following this channel a while, you know that I share a lot of that how-to. And I'm coming up on part 3 of a research set of videos that I'm doing. I don't know how long it'll go. I'm sharing the ways that I have learned to find gold in areas where other people may not have found gold, or areas that shouldn't have gold, or areas that do have gold and other people just didn't know. But one thing to remember in Arizona, tip of the day, anywhere there's copper mines in Arizona, there is gold, and most times detectable gold. And I follow the copper trail, and I don't know, this is stretching too long. I could go on for hours. I'm bad about shutting up. But anyway, the Yuma area is pretty cool. I'm going to tell some more stories about that area and some of the people I met there. Some of them are kind of hard to believe. It's pretty funny. I just want to, I was going to give something away, but I won't. I'll go ahead and save it for the next story. But there's quite a few characters up there. So anyway, my friends, as always, thanks for following, and thanks for subscribing and watching this channel. You're the ones that make it possible. Thanks again, and Nugget Shooter out.